Part number 3 of this exercise is really where the magic happened for me. Part number 3 is you take these false beliefs and you transform them into positive features about yourself. So you have these moments that created these false beliefs, but still there's something positive that came out of these things. There's something really awesome to be grateful for. And so this is what I did. So I was abandoned, transformed into, well, I'm a really reliable and self-motivated adult version of myself. At the young age of 8, I was translating and writing things and doing things for my grandmother that were well above my knowledge base, right? But I had to figure it out. I had no choice. I had to become really resourceful and ask the right questions and know where to find the answers, right? So that created this adult version of me who became this really reliable and self-motivated version of myself, right? I didn't need anybody to tell me, oh, go do this or do it, right? I had to always do it for myself. And so I became this adult version that just knew how to do it, right? And so it's funny because this part of the exercise, guys, helps you transform your story. My old version of myself, the old thought was a very victim mindset. I had a very victim. I would tell people, you know what? Yeah, my mom had me really young. My immigrant grandmother raised me. She didn't know how to guide me. She didn't know like, oh, go do this or cultivate that skill or study up on that, right? She didn't really guide me with life. She was trying to figure her life out herself, right? And so my old mindset, my old victim story was, that's why I don't know as much as everybody else. That's why everybody else is further ahead than I am, right? It was a cop-out, right? And so once I started to really do this exercise, I started to understand how to step in my power. I started to own my story, and I started to transform it from a victim mindset, from a place of victim to a place of victory. And I started to recognize like, oh my gosh, I've always had to do it since I'm 8 years old. I've had to translate things that were well beyond my knowledge base since I was 8. So as the adult version of me, I've been doing it for so long. I've cultivated and developed these skills at such a young age. Of course I could do it just as good, if not better than anybody else, right? Because I've had time to practice this. I've been doing it my whole life. Why wouldn't I be, self-motivated, self-reliable, and resourceful, right? So really, really powerful, guys. This changes your perspective from a lens of victim to a lens of, I am grateful for some of those opportunities that maybe seemed really hard at the time, but really put me in this high speed level of growth and stretching me, right? So really, really powerful. I'm annoying, the next false belief, really transformed into, again, stemming from trauma, stemming from something really, really hard in my life, right? And feeling like I was annoying and having that terrible feeling really transformed me into this adult version of myself who's really in tune with other people's feelings. I remember as a young kid, I used to watch people because I wanted to make sure that if I got a vibe that I was annoying, that I would leave the room or I would change the subject, right? But it started to create this person that was really in tune. I would watch their facial expressions, their body language, their eye movement, their words, how they were sitting, what they were doing, right? With their hands. I started to really overanalyze people's behaviors, right? And so I got really good at identifying like, oh, they feel really uncomfortable, or they're really stressed because they're feeling overwhelmed, or they're feeling inadequate right now, right? Because I started studying people's behaviors because I wanted to identify whether I was becoming annoying or not. Well, what's awesome about that is it created an adult version of me who led with high empathy and high compassion, right? And so that was the first thing I went to is like, okay, I could come into a room and I could see she's got a lot on her plate. He feels overwhelmed. He doesn't think he's going to make that happen, right? Without anybody saying a word. Really awesome attribute from a leadership perspective, right? And so this transforms your story from victim to victory. And so I'm not good enough. Guys, I could remember, again, stemming from trauma, feeling like I wasn't as good as those other kids. I felt like my life was so different from everybody else, and they were doing things and they had that traditional family and they were going to be better than me as a result, right? And so, yes, self-proclaimed, nobody said I wasn't good enough. I decided I wasn't good enough. But there was one point in my life, and I remember as a kid, that I was tired of feeling not good enough. And I said to myself, I'm going to tie my shoes better than those kids. I'm going to get dressed better than those kids. I'm going to show up at class better. I'm going to do everything better than those kids. There was one day it just all clicked. I was tired of being not good enough, right? And so I decided and created these habits that gives 100% in everything I do. And honestly, most times 110%. And so the saying goes, and as I got older, I started to realize, as the saying goes, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it is so true. So you start to realize if you wake up and you get out of bed at 60%, you get dressed at 60%, you get in the car, you get to your job or your school or wherever you're going, your meeting, right? You get to your appointment. and you show up and you start at 60 and you're like, oh, now I got to give it more because I'm somewhere important. Well, you're more because you started at 60 brings you to 85, right? You're never operating at that best ability, right? Your best version self. And so I created these habits, yes, stemming from the feeling of not being good enough. But what created it in me is somebody that shows up at 100%, whether nobody's watching, whether a million people are watching. It just became my habit. Well, I got to do this great, right? I got to do this great because I know it doesn't matter. I'm not getting graded on it, but I just have to do it great. Because guess what? If I do everything at 100% and then I show up to my next meeting or I show up to my next class, whatever I'm doing, right? My little more brings me to 110. And so it's so true. I created and cultivated these habits at such a young age. I don't know how to be any other way. And so guys, I used to look at a lot of my past from a deep level of shame, right? Which prevented me from authentically lifting my head up and speaking to a group or, being who I am and inspiring people to do things and make change. And so as a result of this exercise, I completely transformed my perspective. And I started to understand how special everything was and how amazing these growth opportunities were, right? It changed my lens. And so I started to realize, this is the end of the exercise, but I started to realize at this time, oh my gosh, this is actually me with a couple of team members at the company I used to work for. We were interviewing John Mosley, which is why he's in the picture if you recognize him. But I started to realize everybody has the two departments I was working with, I give everybody a voice, right? Subconsciously. And I remember at the time, people would walk past the departments I was running and they would say, Jen, what is going on in your department? Every time I walk by, somebody's standing on their head or being silly, or you guys are always laughing and having fun. Like, are you guys working? And it's funny because not only were they working, not only were they meeting or exceeding every goal, but they were having fun while they were doing it. And they used to ask me, well, what are you doing? And I used to have I don't know. I used to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just, maybe because I'm younger, maybe it's the type of people I hire. I don't know. I had no explanation. When I went through this exercise, I started to recognize that is my superpower. My superpower, because as a child, I felt like I didn't have a voice and I felt like I didn't belong. And so subconsciously, I was creating departments, I was creating teams that felt like they had a voice and felt like they belonged, right? They were really comfortable in their own skin. They were comfortable doing it themselves. Nothing was too silly to ask, right? I was creating an environment that I wished I had as a kid. And so it's funny because I had no idea I was doing this from a subconscious level, but once I started to come from a place of awareness, I was a pretty good leader before that, but after I was able to come from a deep place of awareness, I was able to press that button even more. And I was able to say, this is my magical power. And it's so deeply tied into how I felt as a kid, so deeply tied into my purpose. I felt this way so that I can grow up and make sure that nobody feels these things, right? Really, really powerful to hone in on that.